I used to believe fire was a thing that lived only in the hearths of homes, domesticated, obedient, harmless when controlled. I used to believe that the world beyond our village walls was simply barren land and wind-carved stone. But on the night the earth split and the sky bled molten light, I learned the first of many lies. Fire had always been alive, and it had always been hungry. We didn't understand that at first. We only knew our roofs had collapsed under waves of ash, our crops had blackened where they stood, and a river of magma glowed a few miles from the village edge, pulsing like the heartbeat of some monstrous beast under the earth. The elders told us we had no choice, we had to leave. The smoldering wastes were the last direction left to run, though no one had crossed them in generations. But behind us was an eruption that wouldn't end, a roaring throat of earth vomiting fire day after day, as if trying to drown the world in its own molten blood. So we ran. I didn't expect to live. I didn't expect any of us to. The ash clung to our faces like a second skin as we trudged deeper into the wastes. The sky was the color of burnt bone, and the smell, gods, the smell was something I can't ever forget. It was thick and metallic, like blood sizzling on a forge. Every breath tasted like smoke and rust. Even now, my lungs still feel coated in it. We walked for days. Nights were worse. The ground glowed faintly beneath us with veins of heat, and more than once I woke to find my boots slowly softening from the warmth of the soil. The children cried, but even their tears evaporated too quickly to fall. By the fourth day, half our water was gone. By the fifth, one of the elders collapsed, her face pallid behind the soot plastered to her skin. We buried her beneath a cairn of blackened stones, though the ground was so hot we could only touch it through layers of cloth. It wasn't until the seventh night that I saw the first flame watching us. I didn't realize what it was at the time. I thought it was a trick of my exhaustion, a spark drifting above a patch of glowing rock. But the spark hovered, swaying almost curiously. When I stepped closer, it drifted back. When I stepped away, it drifted closer. A few children pointed. Their parents hushed them. Everyone thought they were seeing illusions born of heat and grief. So did I. I wasn't afraid then. I should have been. We walked another 2 days before the ground began to change. It grew softer beneath our feet, almost sponge-like in some places. Wisps of steam curled from cracks, thin, ghostly tendrils rising toward the ash-laden sky. I remember looking at the ground and seeing faint ripples inside the rock, like something was moving within it. We didn't speak much by then. Every sound echoed too far, bouncing across the wastes like whispers stalking the air. Even our footsteps felt loud. By the 10th night, more flames were following us. Hundreds. They floated low to the ground, flickering like small torches held by invisible hands. Some drifted high above, flicking their long, ember-like tails through the ash. They were beautiful in a way, hypnotic, warm, graceful. If they were creatures, they were the most delicate I'd ever seen. But the elders grew uneasy. I saw them glancing over their shoulders more often, gripping their staffs tighter. They didn't say anything aloud, not in front of us, but we could feel their fear. It seeped into the air like heat. I remember waking in the middle of the night to silence. A kind of silence that made my bones ache, as though even the wind had chosen to flee. The flames had gathered around our small encampment, forming a wide ring of floating embers. Their light trembled over us, painting our exhausted faces with shifting hues of gold and red. It was beautiful. It was horrifying. I nudged Eric, the man sleeping beside me. "Do you see them?" He blinked awake, rubbed his eyes, and then froze. I saw his pulse flutter in his throat. His hand found mine. "What do they want?" he whispered. I didn't know, but as I stared at them, I felt something strange, like warmth seeping through the air into my skin. Not from the fires themselves, but from something reaching for me. Not touching, just reaching. When dawn came, the flames scattered like insects startled by sudden movement. They vanished over the ridges of stone, leaving nothing but the faint smell of smoke behind. That day, 3 more of our people collapsed. 2 we managed to drag forward. The third never woke again. The air was growing hotter, heavier, like we were descending into a furnace. By now, The smoldering waste stretched endlessly in every direction. Cracked plains, dark ridges, glowing fissures, rivers of molten stones slithering through the land like serpents. The sky flickered with orange light from eruptions far away, painting the horizon in constant fire. We were surrounded by flame, and flame was watching. On the 12th night, the first person disappeared. Her name was Lyra. I hadn't known her well. She kept to herself, a quiet woman with a soft voice and tired eyes. When we set up camp, she slept near the outer edge. Come morning, her bedroll was empty. At first, we thought she had wandered off in delirium. We searched. We called her name. We followed her faint footprints until they vanished near a cluster of dead basalt pillars. There was no blood, no torenfabrik, no signs of a struggle, just soot, and a strange scorch mark in the ground that wasn't there the day before. It was shaped almost like a handprint. After that, even the elders couldn't deny the truth anymore. The flames were not illusions. They were not accidental streaks of heat or drifting sparks. They were alive, and they were hunting us. We didn't speak that idea aloud. No one wanted to give it shape, but we felt it, like pressure building in our skulls, like the earth itself whispering warnings through the hot wind. Every night the flames circled closer. Every morning someone else looked weaker, paler, like something had drained them during sleep. On the 15th day, we encountered the first geyser. We had seen steam vents before, thin jets of vapor spitting from cracks in the ground. But this was different. The earth shuddered beneath us, a low rumble growing louder and louder until the ground split open. A column of molten rock shot skyward with a deafening roar. The heat was unbearable. We screamed and ducked, covering our heads, though the air itself felt like it was peeling our skin away. Where the geyser fell, the earth melted into a pool of liquid fire. The flames we'd seen in the night swarmed toward it like moths, diving into the molten pool and emerging brighter, larger, their bodies pulsing with energy. That was when we understood. They fed, not on wood, not on oil or cloth or anything burnable. They fed on heat, on the land's heat, and maybe on ours. The first attack happened that same night. I woke to a scream so sharp it cut through the air like a blade. I bolted upright, ash flying from my blanket. Around me, others were doing the same, stumbling toward the source of the sound. It was Marek, the hunter with the scar across his jaw. He was thrashing on the ground, surrounded by 3 of the flame creatures. They circled him like wolves, beautiful, terrible wolves made of flickering fire. Every time he tried to rise, they darted closer. I swear I saw one of them stretch toward him, its bright core elongating like a tendril. Marek screamed again, this time hoarse and trembling. As I watched, frost formed on his skin. Frost, in the middle of a place hot enough to melt metal. His breath came out in white puffs. His lips turned blue. Something was draining the heat from his body, as if leaching away the life inside him. Someone shouted. A stone flew through the air, passing through one of the flame creatures. It flickered but didn't dissipate. More stones were thrown. Staffs were swung. But the flame beasts merely drifted aside, weightless, untouchable. They didn't retreat until Marek stopped moving. Only then did they scatter, drifting back into the dark, their bodies glowing brighter than before. We gathered around Marek's body. His skin was pale, brittle to the touch, as if frozen. When someone pressed a hand to his cheek, small cracks formed, like glass under pressure. He was dead, and not in any way death should look. After that, sleep became rare. We huddled together, our bodies trembling. Not from cold, but from fear so sharp it felt like ice in our veins. Every shadow looked like flickering light. Every gust of wind felt like a whisper against the back of my neck. On the 19th day, Eric told me he wasn't sure he'd survive another night. Then we have to find a way out, I said. My voice was rough, cracked from breathing ash. There is no way out, he whispered. Look around. It's all fire. Fire and death. I didn't argue. He was right, but something in me refused to accept it. Something burned, not like the flames, but like resolve or desperation. That night, I stayed awake as long as I could, clutching a shard of obsidian as if it were a weapon that could help. But fatigue was stronger than fear. At some point, I drifted. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't where I had fallen asleep. The world around me glowed with a reddish haze. The air shimmered. I was lying on a patch of soft, heat-pulsing ground. And something was watching me. A flame, larger than any I'd seen yet, floated a few feet away. It swayed gently, as if breathing. Its core burned a deep, almost crimson gold. It didn't move closer. It didn't move away. It just watched. And then it spoke. Not with words, with heat. A wave of warmth pulsed toward me, wrapping around my chest. Images flashed in my mind. Volcanoes erupting, molten rivers coursing through valleys, creatures of fire dancing in caverns of glowing stone. The images weren't frightening. They were beautiful, almost mesmerizing. Then the warmth turned. Sharper, hungrier. I felt it pressing against me, searching my body the way one might search a dark room for something luminous. Pushed at my ribs, my stomach, my throat. And then it retreated. Suddenly, violently. I gasped, sucking in the scorched air. The flame's light flickered rapidly, as if agitated. And then it fled. I sat up, trembling. My skin felt colder than it ever had in my life. It had tried to take something from me. No, it had tried to taste me. I scrambled back toward camp, stumbling over rocks and fissures until shapes of sleeping refugees came into view. I collapsed beside Eric, shaking uncontrollably. I didn't sleep again. And in the morning, when the others rose, I knew something had changed inside me. Something the flames hadn't taken. Something they had awakened. The sun, or what passed for a sun in the ash-choked sky, was little more than a pale smear of orange. Even at midday, the world felt like twilight, as if the flames themselves had stolen the light. Every step we took scorched our boots. Every breath carried grit. Yet we kept moving. By now, our group was smaller. Between the lost, the dead, and the ones too weak to go on, we were no longer a company of survivors. We were a procession of shadows, drawn through the wastes by a determination so raw it hurt to think about. I couldn't stop seeing them, the flames. They were everywhere, or at least I imagined them everywhere. A flicker behind a ridge, a glow along a fissure, the pulsing of heat beneath the stone that could have been a heartbeat or could have been my own imagination. Sometimes I thought I saw them watching, waiting for me to fall behind. That night, we found what appeared to be a cave, a gash in the side of a blackened hill. Smoke curled from its mouth like the exhale of a beast. We decided to rest there, though the elders murmured warnings about the caves of the Smoldering Wastes. No one ventured into them and returned sane or at all. I volunteered to keep watch first, claiming my exhaustion as an excuse to walk the edges of the cavern. I should have realized it was a trap. The first time I saw the flames in the cave, I thought I was hallucinating. They weren't outside, hovering or drifting. They were inside, crawling across the walls, licking the rock, twisting and coiling like serpents. Their movement was deliberate. They seemed to measure the space, filling it, bending to its shape. And then they noticed me. It was subtle at first. A flicker in the corner of my vision. A faint heat that wasn't coming from the cracks in the stone. But I knew. I froze. My pulse roared in my ears. They surged toward me with the speed of smoke caught in a draft. The air thickened, pressing down on my lungs. I stumbled backward, tripping over a jagged rock. The largest of them, a flame taller than any human, its core glowing like molten gold, paused a few feet away. Its edges shimmered and danced, almost liquid. I swear I heard it whisper my name. And then the ground beneath it cracked, and I realized it had no need to speak. Its presence alone drained heat, and I was already shivering despite the infernal temperature. I ran. I didn't stop until I slammed into the group. My chest heaving, I babbled something about the cave, about the flames inside, about something wrong. The elders hushed me. "Show us," one said. I tried. I led them in, trembling. The cave was larger than it seemed at first, a labyrinth of jagged basalt pillars and pools of steam. But it wasn't empty. The flames were everywhere. They had multiplied since I first saw them. Some swirled around the ceilings, casting shadows that writhed. Others slithered along the walls. And the largest, the one that had followed me, hovered in the center, as if commanding the rest. We could not move closer. Not physically, nor could we force ourselves mentally. The air itself felt like it was filled with hunger. The eldest among us, a man named Thorin, finally spoke. His voice was low, gravelly with smoke and age. "They are not just fire," he said. "They are the land itself. This is the heart of the Smoldering Wastes. It knows us, tests us, and it chooses." We didn't understand. Not fully. But we understood enough to flee. That night we huddled outside the cave. Sleep came in broken fragments, if at all. Every flicker of distant light, every shift of the ash-laden wind, made us flinch. And I felt it, a heat that pulsed in my chest, as though the flames had left a part of themselves behind. By the 23rd day, the Smoldering Wastes began to change again. The fissures widened, the rivers of molten rock grew faster, the heat grew oppressive. It was as if the land had noticed us again, and it was furious. One evening, a new horror revealed itself. From the horizon came a distant roar, low but vibrating through our bones. I had felt tremors before, subtle, unnerving, but this was different. The ground itself heaved, and the air trembled. We watched as a volcano erupted far. Ahead, a slow, deliberate explosion that sent plumes of fire and smoke skyward. But the eruption was not the worst. From the molten heart of the mountain emerged creatures. Flame-shaped, humanoid, but immense. They rose from the lava as if the earth itself was giving birth. Each one towered above us, their bodies pools of fire shaped into limbs, faces, torsos. They moved like liquid gold, and their eyes, or what passed for eyes, burned with intelligence. The air screamed. Even at a distance, the heat was unbearable. The elders screamed a warning. We ran. Some of the group fell behind. There was no helping them. When we looked back, the land where they had been was empty, but the air shimmered, filled with tiny sparks that twisted upward, joining the molten giants as they surged forward. That night, we slept in a valley of scorched rock. The giant flame beings did not follow, but the smaller ones were still around, flickering at the edges of our vision, circling our camp like predators scenting weakness. I dreamed that night. I was falling into a river of molten rock. The flames reached out to me, and I thought I would be burned alive. But instead of pain, there was sensation, warmth, knowledge, a voice. Not a voice I could hear with ears, but one I felt in my chest. Weakness is death. Strength is survival. The land takes only what it needs. Are you strong? I woke drenched in sweat, trembling. When I looked around, the sparks of flame at the edges of our camp twitched as if answering. We could not linger in one place for long. By the 25th day, the land itself seemed to be closing in, narrowing the safe paths, pushing us toward something. The earth cracked more frequently, and rivers of molten rock twisted across our route. Sometimes we had to leap from one fragment of solid ground to another, ignoring the blistering heat beneath our feet. I kept thinking about the flame that had spoken to me, about the way it had touched something deep inside, testing me. I hated it, but a part of me knew I had changed. I had learned something about the land, about the fire, about what it wanted. It wanted us to understand that weakness was fatal, that the heat of life could be taken, that nothing alive could pass through here without paying in full. By the 27th day, I had begun to notice patterns. The flames avoided certain cracks. They reacted to movement, yes, but not just movement, calculated, deliberate motion. We could maybe predict them, maybe survive. I shared this with Eric. He didn't like hearing it. "You think we can outsmart them?" He spat, face slick with sweat. "They are the land. They are fire. There is no outsmarting fire." "Maybe," I said, "but fire burns differently when it's afraid." He didn't answer, but I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a spark of hope. That night we moved again, always moving, always careful. The flames followed in silence, at a distance, probing, learning. The closer we got to the heart of the wastes, the place Thorin warned us about, the more aggressive they became. And then we found her. A woman, half buried in ash and stone, her skin pale as the bones around her. Her hair was matted with soot, and her eyes burned with a strange light, like she had been touched by the flames themselves. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She merely watched as we approached. Thorin whispered, voice trembling, "She's one of them now. She survived, but the fire, it changed her. She is part of it." We didn't know what to do. Fear held us frozen. The wind shifted, carrying a scent that made my stomach turn. Smoke, ash, molten metal, and something else. Something alive. The flames around the valley grew brighter, larger, reacting to her presence. And in that instant I realized they were communicating, teaching, testing, preparing. I swallowed, my throat dry. "We have to move," I said, though part of me longed to stay to see what would happen next. We fled. And that was when the ground shook beneath us like a heartbeat. The ground shook with a deep, sonorous rumble. The kind that rolled through your bones and made your teeth chatter despite the searing heat. Rocks tumbled down from jagged cliffs, dust and ash pluming into the air. The refugees screamed and stumbled, and I had to grab Eric by the arm to keep him from toppling into a fissure. I didn't understand what had triggered it. A volcano? A tremor? Or something else, something alive beneath the earth? I didn't have time to figure it out. All I knew was that the earth was trying to swallow us. We ran. I can't describe the chaos. Heat waves danced along the ground, rippling the air. Fissures split open in front of us, molten rivers hissing in jagged arcs. Sparks leapt into the sky like fireflies gone mad. And the flames, the smaller ones, dove and darted among us, flickering dangerously close, but never touching. I realized then that they were guiding us, hurting us. Every instinct screamed that they wanted to kill us. But for some reason, they didn't. Not yet. By sheer luck, or perhaps the flames themselves, we stumbled into a narrow canyon, its walls blackened and fissured. The heat here was overwhelming. Our boots burned, our clothes singed, but the canyon seemed to funnel us forward, keeping the worst of the shaking at bay. Somehow we survived the night. Somehow we survived the next day. But with every step, I felt the land testing us, the fire measuring us, like a predator circling the edge of its prey. On the 30th day, we found the remnants of a settlement. A village, long abandoned, its buildings collapsed and blackened. There were skeletons scattered in the streets, melted shoes fused to cobblestones, and ash everywhere. But the sight that froze my blood was the flames. Hundreds of tiny flickers dancing among the ruins, moving with a rhythm almost human, almost sinister. Thorin knelt among the ruins, tracing his fingers over a scorched stone. They do not merely destroy," he whispered. "They consume and preserve. They take what is weak and leave what is strong. Or what they choose." We didn't linger. We couldn't. The air was growing hotter with each passing hour, and the sky seemed to bleed fire over the horizon. Every shadow looked like a flickering flame. Every breath tasted like ash, and every movement was accompanied by a flicker of orange in the corner of my vision. That night I dreamed again. The dream was more vivid than ever. I was standing in the heart of the Smoldering Wastes. Lava rivers twisted around me like snakes, glowing red and orange. The sky was a violent swirl of smoke and fire, and the flames, they were everywhere. They surged toward me, then formed shapes, humans, animals, impossible things that twisted in ways that made my stomach knot. And at the center of it all was the woman we had found, the one changed by the fire. She raised her hands, and the flames obeyed. They moved like extensions of her will, bending and twisting, forming towers, rivers, and whirlpools of fire. And then she looked at me. I felt her gaze burn into my chest, and I woke screaming. When I opened my eyes, the camp was quiet, too quiet. I realized, with a rising panic, that none of the others were awake. I reached for Eric. He wasn't there. The fire had been closer than I thought. I bolted upright, And that's when I saw them, the flames. Dozens of them, circling the camp silently, moving in ways that defied physics. Their glow was brighter than before, and I realized with a shiver that they were no longer just hunting. They were coordinating. And then I saw movement at the edge of the light, a figure stepping forward. The woman. She walked slowly, deliberately, her skin glowing faintly, eyes molten gold. And behind her, the flames surged like an army, forming shapes, building walls, cutting off the canyon exit. We were trapped. I screamed a warning, shaking the others awake. Chaos erupted. People shouted, stumbled, and ran, but it was futile. The flames blocked every exit, twisting and twisting the canyon walls as if the earth itself were reshaping to trap us. And then the woman spoke. Not in words, but in heat, in pressure, in a voice that pressed directly into my chest. You are weak. You are prey. But there is a choice. I froze. A part of me, somewhere deep inside, felt a pull toward her, toward the fire, toward the impossible, terrifying beauty of it. Join us, the heat whispered, or be consumed. The first screams came from the others. I watched as one of the refugees, an older man named Soren, collapsed, his body frozen and cracking under the influence of the flames. Another child fell into convulsions, screaming, eyes wide in terror. The heat around them intensified, and the flames seemed to drink them in, melting them into nothingness while leaving only ash and faint traces of memory behind. I ran. I ran blindly, dragging whoever I could with me, trying to reach some passage in the canyon walls. But the flames anticipated every move. They flowed, bent, and surged like water, forcing us toward the heart of the wastes. I don't know how many hours or days it took, but eventually, exhaustion overtook us. Those of us still alive collapsed against blackened stones, our skin blistered, our lungs filled with ash. And then she came, the woman, closer now. Her presence radiated heat that burned, but not like fire. It was a living heat, intelligent, aware, demanding. She knelt beside me, and for the first time I saw the truth. She was no longer human. She had been consumed and transformed by the fire, yet somehow remained herself. Her eyes glowed with the knowledge of everything the flames had seen, everything they had taken. And in that moment, I understood. The fire wasn't evil. Not in the way we understood. It was survival incarnate. It took the weak, tested the strong, and reshaped life into something new. You cannot fight us, I heard, not with ears, but with my mind. You cannot run. You cannot hide. And yet, small spark of defiance flared inside me. I didn't know why. Perhaps it was desperation. Perhaps it was something stubbornly human. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat of life still pulsing in me, still resisting the fire's pull. Then show me, the voice said. Prove you are strong. And that is when I realized the fire wasn't merely hunting. It was testing. It wanted to see what could survive, what could adapt. And I, trembling and scorched, realized that survival meant more than running. It meant understanding, listening, and, somehow, becoming part of this living, terrifying land without losing myself entirely. I took a deep breath. The heat pressed down, testing me, threatening to melt me from the inside out. But I held on. Show me, I whispered back. The flames paused, and for the first time I felt the fire hesitate. The pause between us felt like 1,000 years. The air thickened, the flames swirling around us. Closer, brighter, burning hotter than before. My body trembled, not just from fear but from something else, something more primal. The fire wasn't just testing me, it was searching me. It knew what I was capable of. It knew my fears, could taste my weakness, and it had found it. But I refused to give in. I refused to let it consume me. Not yet. Not without a fight. I don't know how long we stayed there, staring at each other, at me and the woman or whatever she had become. Her eyes burned brighter now, molten pools of fire. She didn't move, didn't speak again. But I felt the weight of her presence, like a heavy hand pressing down on my chest. The air around her rippled, as if the flames themselves were reaching out, waiting for my response. I took a deep breath, gathering the last of my strength. My skin felt tight from the heat, my eyes stinging with smoke. "I won't join you," I said, voice rough. "I'm not like you." The woman's lips curled into a smile. It was strange, inhuman. Her face seemed to shimmer, flickering like the flames she commanded. "You are not like me," she agreed, her voice a soft hiss in the air. "But you are like this place, like the land, like the fire itself." I didn't understand. Couldn't. All I knew was that the flames around me felt like they were pressing in, encroaching on my mind, tugging at the edges of my thoughts. They whispered promises, promises of power, of release, of a world remade. But I couldn't listen. I couldn't fall to it. The woman rose slowly, her figure flickering like a mirage in the intense heat. "You're afraid," she said. "But fear is what drives you. It's why you're still here, still alive." I felt a surge of anger then, hot and sharp. "I'm not afraid of you." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her smile widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw the fire itself rise up behind her, as though it were waiting for her command, waiting to consume us all. The others, what was left of them, moved closer to me, their faces drawn, hollow. Eric was beside me, his eyes dark with fear but also with something else, something like determination. He whispered to me, voice barely audible over the crackling of the flames. "We can't outrun it. We can't fight it. It's everywhere. It's part of the land now." "I know," I whispered back, "but I'm not ready to become part of it." I glanced around at the others. Most were too weak to stand. Some of them were already leaning on each other for support, their eyes glazed. The fire had drained them, physically and mentally. They were becoming something else, something that belonged to the smoldering wastes. I could see it in their eyes. They were starting to believe the fire had answers. They were starting to believe that giving in was the only way to survive. But I wasn't going to surrender. Not to the fire. Not to the land. The woman's gaze flickered between us, her smile turning cruel. "You can't run. You can't hide. You've already been marked. You've already been chosen." I could feel it then, the weight of it. The land, the fire, the wastes. It was all pressing down on me, and I knew that there was no escape. The land itself was alive, and it had already taken root in us. We were not its visitors. We were its children. It would not let us go. Not unless we gave ourselves completely to it. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and confusion. "Why us? Why this?" The woman's eyes softened, just for a moment. "Because you are the last of your kind. The weak have already perished. The strong are what remain." She stepped closer to me, the flames licking at her skin, but she didn't burn. She was part of it, and it was part of her. She reached out, her hand just inches from my chest, and I felt the heat radiate from her. It burned, but not in the way I expected. It was almost welcoming. "Join us," she said, her voice almost tender. "Become one with the fire. Become eternal. There is no death here, only rebirth." I recoiled, shaking my head. "No," she paused. "Then you will die with the others. It is inevitable. The fire does not choose based on desire. It chooses based on necessity." I could feel the land trembling beneath us, as if it were waiting for me to make my choice. The earth groaned, a low, rumbling sound that echoed through the canyon. The flames surrounding us flared, bright and sudden, as though urging me to decide. I looked at Eric. His face was pale, his lips cracked with thirst, but his eyes were clear. He was still holding on. And I understood then. This was not just about survival. It was about losing ourselves. The flames offered eternal life, but it was a life without freedom. A life without choice. It was a prison, one forged from fire and heat and the land itself. I couldn't let that happen. "We fight," I said. The words came out more forcefully than I expected. "We fight until the last breath. We don't become part of it." The woman's smile faltered. "You misunderstand. You cannot fight the fire. The The fire is the land. It is everything. It is you. And then, as if to prove her point, the ground beneath us split open, sending a shockwave through the canyon. I heard the screams before I saw it. A massive, serpentine creature of fire rising from the earth, its body coiling upward like a dragon made of molten rock. Its eyes were pits of flame, and its breath was the heat of 1,000 suns. It rose to its full height, towering over us, and then it opened its mouth, sending a wave of fire cascading toward us. I ran. I don't know how far I got, or how long I ran. The fire was everywhere. The land itself was turning against us, pushing us toward the edge of the canyon. There was no way out. The creature followed us, its flames licking at the rocks, its massive body rolling across the ground like a tide of destruction. But then I saw it. A crack in the earth. A fissure that led deeper into the heart of the wastes. It was a chance. A small one. I grabbed Eric's arm, pulling him toward it. "Go!" I shouted. "Go!" We didn't look back. The earth rumbled again, and the fire surged behind us, but we didn't stop. We dove into the crack, tumbling down into the dark, hoping that the fire couldn't reach us here. But even as we fell into the depths, I knew this was only the beginning. We had survived the flames for now, but the wastes would never stop. It was alive. It was watching, and we were already a part of it. The darkness swallowed us whole, and the air tasted different down here, thick, heavy, as though we were breathing the very earth itself. I could still feel the fire above us, still hear the rumblings of the molten creature chasing us. But down in the crack, everything was muffled, as though the world above was being erased, piece by piece, by the depth of the wastes. I dragged Eric forward, my hands scraping against rough, jagged rock. Behind us, the heat had not yet receded. The land trembled with a life of its own, the earth's pulse vibrating through the stones beneath my feet. But it wasn't the heat I feared anymore. It was the silence. The further we descended, the quieter it became. The oppressive sound of fire, of crackling flames and eruptions, grew fainter, replaced by a strange hum. A low vibration that seemed to come from the walls of the fissure itself. The air was cooler here, but still laced with an unnatural warmth, as though the land was alive, breathing in time with our own. "We have to keep moving," I whispered, though I wasn't sure Eric could hear me. His face was pale, his body trembling from exhaustion, but he nodded, pushing himself forward. We weren't alone. At the bottom of the fissure, we found what looked like an underground cavern, a vast network of tunnels stretching into the heart of the earth. The stone here was smooth, almost polished, like it had been shaped by something intelligent, something deliberate. The walls glistened with veins of molten rock, and I could feel the temperature rising as we ventured deeper. The further we went, the more it felt like we were descending into the belly of a beast. The walls hummed louder now, and I could swear I heard whispers, voices. Eric stopped, his hand brushing against the smooth stone. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with something between fear and awe. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. I didn't answer right away. The whispers seemed to swirl around us, echoing off the cavern walls, but I couldn't make out the words. It was as though they were speaking in a language I didn't understand, or perhaps one I had never known. "I hear them," I said, my voice barely a breath. I think it's the land." We moved forward, compelled by something I couldn't explain. The whispers grew louder, sharper, until they were almost deafening. And then, just as suddenly, they stopped. We were standing at the edge of an immense chasm, a massive pit of blackness. The air was thick with heat, and in the distance, I could make out the faintest glow, something pulsing, something alive. "Is that?" Eric began, but his voice trailed off. "The heart of the wastes," I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. It was vast, a pit so deep and wide that it swallowed everything in its path. The glow came from the center, a pulsating, undulating mass of molten rock and flame, surrounded by swirling tendrils of fire. It was as if the earth itself had opened its mouth, revealing the core, and from it came the heat, the fire, and the whispers. But there was something else there too. Something ancient. Something watching. The closer we got to the edge of the pit, the stronger the pull became. It was as if the wastes itself was reaching out, trying to claim us, to drag us into its depths. I could feel it inside me now, that same hunger I had felt before, that same pull toward the fire. It wanted me. It wanted us all. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't going to fall. Not yet. We stepped forward cautiously, as though the very ground might shift beneath us. And then I saw it. The figure. At first, it was just a shadow, something moving in the molten glow. But as we moved closer, I realized it was a person. A man. A woman. No, not human. Not anymore. The figure was made of flame, its body flickering and shifting, constantly changing shape, like a being formed from the very essence of fire itself. It stood at the edge of the pit, its glowing eyes fixed on us, and I knew, without a doubt, that it had been waiting for us. Eric stopped, his breath catching in his throat. "What is that?" he whispered. I didn't know. I couldn't explain it, but somehow I felt I already understood. This creature was what the wastes had become. It was the fire. It was the land. It was the thing that had been waiting for us all along. The figure didn't speak. It didn't need to. The fire around it writhed, as though alive in ways that were incomprehensible. But then, in a flash of heat and light, the figure stepped forward, and I felt it. The heat, the fire. It rushed toward me like a tidal wave, but it wasn't just physical. It was mental. It was psychological. It was feeding on me. I gasped, falling to my knees, the heat radiating from my skin, scorching my insides. I could feel the fire crawling through my veins, burning away my thoughts, my will, my very soul. But I wasn't going to let it win. With every ounce of strength I had left, I forced myself to stand. I reached out, my hands trembling, and I grabbed Eric's arm. "Don't let it take you," I said, my voice breaking. But he wasn't responding. His eyes were glazed, his body trembling, as if he were already half consumed. The fire had begun to eat at him, sinking into his skin, pulling him toward the edge of the pit. "No!" I shouted, pulling him back. But he resisted. "Join us." The figure spoke, though its voice wasn't a voice. It was the sound of fire crackling, the earth groaning, the air vibrating. "Become part of the land. Become part of the eternal fire." I shook my head. "No," I said again, my voice firm, though my body felt weaker with every passing second. The figure seemed to smile, though its face remained flickering, ever-changing. "You cannot escape," it said, its voice growing more insistent. "The fire is inevitable. You are already a part of it. There is no running from what is inside you." I could feel it then. Something inside me, something that had been awakened by the flames. The fire wasn't just out there in the land. It had been inside me all along. It had been feeding on my fear, on my rage, on my pain. And it wanted more. But I wasn't going to give it more. Not yet. I gripped Eric harder, pulling him toward the edge of the chasm. "We're not part of it," I said, my voice hoarse. "We're not. We're human. We're still alive." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. Not fully. Not anymore. The figure laughed, a sound like crackling flame. "You are alive," it said. "But you are also changed. The fire has touched you. You are already part of the wastes. And soon you will join us." I backed away, dragging Eric with me. The fire around us surged, threatening to swallow us whole. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. We had to escape. I didn't know how we would survive this. I didn't know if we could. But as I looked at Eric, his face twisted in pain, his body racked with the heat, I knew one thing for certain. We weren't done yet. The fire surged behind us, relentless and hungry, the heat pressing in on all sides. I could feel it, more than just the burn of the flames against my skin. It was inside me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts, turning them to ash. The wastes had marked us. The land had already begun to reshape us. I could hear it, the land whispering in the back of my mind, urging me to surrender, to let go. But I couldn't. Not yet. I pulled Eric forward, stumbling over the jagged rocks that jutted from the walls of the chasm. His body was heavy in my arms, his face pale, his eyes glazed over. I could see the fire crawling up his skin, writhing beneath the surface like something alive. It was already inside him. I gritted my teeth and pushed harder, desperate, trying to ignore the burning weight in my chest, the suffocating pressure of the fire closing in. Every step felt like it could be my last, but I couldn't stop. Not while Eric was still breathing. Not while we still had a chance to escape. I didn't know how much time had passed since we had descended into the cavern, since the fire figure, if it could even be called that, had spoken to us. I only knew one thing. It wanted us. It wanted everyone who had come into the Smoldering Wastes. And we weren't the first. I had seen the remnants of those who had come before. The bones, the half-melted bodies, the charred husks of people who had tried to survive, who had thought they could outrun the fire. But the land was patient, took its time. It wore you down piece by piece. The fire wasn't a force of nature. It was a force of will. It was alive, sentient, and it had no mercy. I could feel it closing in on us, even in the depths of the wastes. The land was alive and it was hungry. We were no longer travelers, no longer refugees. We were prey. I didn't realize how much time had passed until the ground shook again. The walls trembled under the force of something massive, something unstoppable. The fire creature that had followed us, was it following us? Or was it leading us? Was close. Keep moving, I shouted, though I wasn't sure Eric could even hear me. His head lolled against my shoulder, his breathing shallow, ragged. I couldn't carry him any longer. His weight was too much and my strength was slipping away. The fire had already begun to burn through me, too, crawling beneath my skin, spreading its poison, its fire, its hunger. I set him down on the ground, pressing his head into the cool stone. His eyes flickered open, barely registering me. Eric, listen to me. My voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. You have to hold on. We can't stop. We need to get out of here. Please. His mouth moved, but the words were incoherent, like the fire had already burned away the ability to speak. Couldn't let it win. Not yet. I grabbed his shoulders and shook him, desperation clawing at my throat. You have to help me. Please, Eric, we're still alive. We're not like them. We can still make it out. But then, as if the land itself was answering, I heard it. The hum. The low, vibrating pulse from deep within the earth. The fire was coming. It was everywhere. It was the land, the rock, the very air itself. And then I saw it at the far end of the cavern. The figure. It wasn't alone. There were others. Dozens of them. Tall, shimmering shapes of flame and molten rock. Their forms constantly shifting, as though they were made of the fire itself. Some were humanoid, others monstrous. Their eyes were glowing pits of molten gold, their movements slow and deliberate. They were coming toward us. The fire, the wastes, they were alive. I stood, hands shaking, my mind racing. There was no way out. Every passage was blocked. The fire was everywhere. But then I remembered. The fissure, the crack in the earth that had brought us here. If we could reach it, maybe we could find a way out. Maybe we could escape. I grabbed Eric by the arm, my breath quickening. I pulled him to his feet, but he wasn't responsive. His body was limp, a shell of the person he had once been. The fire had taken too much from him, and I wasn't sure I could get him out. Please, Eric, I whispered. Stay with me. The fire surged forward, crackling in the distance, and I knew it was too late. The wastes had us. There was no escaping it. There was no fighting it. The flames were alive. They were waiting for us to fall. And yet I still didn't stop. Couldn't stop. I turned toward the crack in the earth, staggering forward, dragging Eric behind me. The fire was closing in on us, crawling along the cavern walls, their glowing eyes fixed on us, waiting for us to break. I reached the fissure, But as I stepped closer, I felt it. The pull. The fire inside me stronger now. I could feel it racing through my veins, burning my blood, igniting my every thought. The fire was in me. It was part of me. I had tried to run from it. But now I could feel it choosing me. The land had marked me, and it wanted me to stay. I stepped forward, but as I did, the ground shook violently, and the flames surged. The air burned, and I heard Eric's labored breath beside me. But when I looked back at him, his eyes were wide, filled with that same empty, hollow look I had seen in the others. The fire had consumed him. It was only a matter of time before it consumed me, too. "No!" I screamed, grabbing him by the shoulders, shaking him, trying to pull him back. But it was too late. He had already fallen. He was already gone. I let go of him. I couldn't stay. I couldn't let it take me. I wouldn't. I stepped into the fissure, my body burning, my mind searing with the weight of the fire inside me. The flames swirled around the edges of the crack, but they didn't follow. They watched, waiting. The land, it was watching. I stumbled deeper into the darkness, the fire still alive within me, pressing against my skin, against my thoughts. But now, in the silence of the fissure, I could think. I could hear myself. And I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Somehow I had survived. But I had become something else. I was part of it now. The deeper I went, the darker it became. The air in the fissure thickened, heavier with every step, until it was a weight that pressed on my chest, suffocating me. But I couldn't stop, couldn't turn back. Not now. Not after everything that had happened, after everything that had been lost. I moved through the darkness with the fire still raging inside me, like an ember lodged deep in my chest, pulsing in time with my heart. I could feel its heat radiating through my body, burning my veins, the pulse of it almost like a living thing. The more I tried to ignore it, the more it grew, consuming me, reshaping me, turning me into something that felt other. But it wasn't just physical. The fire had changed me in ways I didn't understand. It had twisted my thoughts, my feelings. Every moment felt like I was walking on the edge of a knife, balancing between who I had been and something else, something darker, something more powerful. I tried to focus on the cracks in the stone, the way they shimmered with the heat from the land above, but I couldn't escape the whispers. They were back. They'd never really left. The voices were faint at first, just a faint hum, a vibration in the walls. But as I pushed deeper into the heart of the fissure, they grew louder, more distinct. They weren't just in my head anymore. They were everywhere, filling the air, echoing in my bones. Join us, become one with the fire. You are part of the land now. I stumbled, my mind spinning. The words were familiar now, like a song I had once known but had forgotten. And yet they weren't just words. They were thoughts. They were emotions. The fire was alive, yes, but it wasn't just a force of destruction. It was a force of desire. It wanted something. It wanted me. I pressed my hands to my head, trying to drown out the voices, but they only grew louder. I was hearing them now clearly. "You cannot escape," they whispered. "You are ours. We are you. You cannot fight what you are becoming." The ground beneath me shifted, and I stumbled, my knees scraping against the jagged rock. I tried to steady myself, but the world around me seemed to warp, like the walls were breathing. I could feel the heat growing stronger again, the fire pressing against my skin, urging me to surrender. And yet, even as I felt it, the pull, the hunger, I held on. I wasn't ready. Not yet. The cavern opened into another chamber, vast and impossibly deep. The glow from the fire above was dim here, but still there, still waiting. I couldn't see the bottom of the chasm, only the endless spiral of molten rock and flame. And in the center of it all was the source, a massive, writhing mass of fire, dark and pulsing, like a living heart. It was the heart of the wastes, the core of the land. It was what had created everything. It was the fire, the land, the destruction. It was the source of everything that had brought us here. I felt it, the pull of it, the call. It was the same feeling I had felt when I first saw the woman. The same feeling I had felt when the flames had first touched me. It was the fire reaching out to claim me, to make me part of it. But I wasn't ready to surrender. I wasn't ready to lose myself completely. Not yet. I forced myself to move, pushing through the haze of heat and smoke toward the center of the chamber. I could hear the voices growing louder now, as though the fire was speaking to me directly. They were speaking to everyone, the survivors, the lost souls, the ones who had fallen before us. They had all become part of the fire. They had all surrendered. But I couldn't. I reached out, my fingers brushing the edges of the molten core. The heat was unbearable, searing my skin, but I couldn't pull away. The fire had me now, and I knew it. But I wouldn't let it win. I focused, digging into the last shred of myself that wasn't consumed by the flames. I had been running from this moment for so long, but now, in the depths of the wastes, I realized it wasn't about escape. It was about facing the fire. It was about standing in the heart of the smoldering wastes and saying no. I was not its prey. I was not its creation. I was human, and that was enough. The fire surged, and for a moment I thought I might burn alive. I thought I might melt into the land itself, become one with it, part of the unending cycle. But as I stood there, hands outstretched, I felt something break. The fire roared, the voices screamed, and then it stopped. There was a moment of silence, a moment of perfect stillness, and then I heard it, a sound, deep in the distance, like the earth itself sighing in relief. The heat faded, just slightly, enough for me to breathe, enough for me to think. I stepped back, away from the core, away from the fire. The voices in my head were still there, but now they were weaker, distant, like a fading memory. I had fought it, but the wastes weren't done with me yet. I turned and ran, ignoring the way my body screamed in protest. The fire might have paused for a moment, but it wasn't finished. It would never be finished. I had felt it in the depths of the land, in the fire, in the earth. It would never stop. The wastes were a cycle, a test, a judgment. It wasn't about survival. It wasn't about living. It was about changing. The wastes would reshape you. The question was, what would you become? I couldn't answer that. Not yet. But as I ran, my heart hammering in my chest, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let it win. Not yet. I ran. My feet were numb, my body screaming in protest, but I couldn't stop. Not now. The fire inside me had only grown stronger, like an insidious pulse, beating in time with my own heart. Every step felt heavier, like the land itself was trying to drag me back into the pit, into the flames. But I refused. I refused to be consumed. Not yet. The air was thick with heat, and the smell of smoke and charred earth filled my lungs. The wastes had a taste, a bitter, metallic taste that clung to my tongue, and it was seeping into me, making me feel hollow, like I was breathing the land, like it was part of me now, seeping into my very bones. I stumbled, my vision blurred, my breath ragged, but I couldn't stop. The fire was everywhere. I could feel it in the ground beneath me, in the rocks around me, in the very air itself. The wastes were alive. It was a sentient thing, a thing that had been here long before us and would remain long after we were gone. But as I stumbled through the chasm, I understood something. The wastes weren't just about survival. They weren't about the fire. They were about change. And that was what they wanted from me, what they wanted from all of us. Change. I pressed my hands to my face, feeling the heat radiate from my skin. I could taste the fire, feel it in my veins. It was there, deep inside me, burning like an ember. And I could hear it too, the whispering, that constant hum. It was no longer just in the distance. It was inside me, inside my mind, inside my thoughts. Join us, become one with the fire. I could hear the others in the back of my mind, those who had fallen before me, those who had been consumed by the wastes. They were all still here in the land, in the fire. They were a part of it now, part of me. I couldn't let it happen, but it was getting harder to fight. I ran, my legs aching with every step, but I couldn't stop. The wastes were closing in, the fire chasing me, pulling me deeper into the land. I could feel it crawling under my skin, seeping into my blood. It was starting to feel like it was me, like I had always been this way, always belonged to the fire. I had to resist. I had to fight. But the whispers were louder now. The voices were inside me, gnawing at my thoughts, telling me things. You belong here. You are a part of this land. You have always been one with the fire. It was hard to think. Hard to remember what I was fighting for. What I had been before all of this. I could feel the fire's touch in my chest, spreading through my limbs. The heat was unbearable, like my blood had turned to molten rock. I staggered, almost falling to my knees, but I caught myself. My hands scraped against the jagged stone walls of the cavern as I pressed forward, determined to reach the end. I didn't know how much longer I could last. The fire was a part of me now, and I was beginning to feel it more deeply than ever before. I was becoming a creature of the wastes, a part of this living, breathing land. But I couldn't let it consume me. I wouldn't. I could see the light ahead, just a faint glow, like a distant star on the horizon. It was the first sign of hope I had seen in what felt like an eternity. But as I drew closer, I saw something else. A figure, a shadow moving in the distance. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. "Who's there?" I called out, but my voice cracked, like it was no longer mine. It sounded hollow, distant. The figure didn't respond. It simply stepped forward, its form flickering in the dim light. It was a woman. Her face was obscured by the shadows, but I could feel her presence. It was like the fire itself had manifested into her, like she was made from the very land that had come to claim me. She stepped into the light, and I saw her face clearly. Her eyes were molten, glowing with a fierce light that made my stomach twist. Her skin shimmered with a strange iridescence, as though she were made of fire and smoke. "You?" I whispered. "Yes," she said, her voice soft, yet it carried the weight of the land itself. "I am what you will become." I shook my head. "No," but she stepped closer, her presence suffocating. The fire in her eyes seemed to draw me in, like a moth to a flame. I could feel it, the pull, the deep, unrelenting hunger that threatened to swallow me whole. "No," I said again, this time with more force. But the woman smiled, and the fire in her eyes burned brighter. "You cannot run from it. You cannot fight what you are becoming. You are already a part of the wastes just as I am. We are all one." Her words echoed in my mind, and I could feel the fire growing inside me. It wasn't just physical anymore. It was psychological. It was consuming my thoughts, my identity, my very sense of self. But I resisted. "I am not like you," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm not like any of you." Her smile faded, replaced by something cold, something sharp. "You will be, in time. The wastes change everyone. It is inevitable. You cannot escape." I took a step back, feeling the heat of her presence, the burning intensity that radiated from her. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving. I turned and ran, leaving the woman behind. But even as I ran, I could feel her watching me. The fire, the land, the wastes, they were watching. They were waiting. I didn't know how much further I could go. The fire was a part of me now, and I was starting to feel it take root, feel it spreading through me like a disease. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I ran until my legs gave out, my body collapsing to the ground, but I didn't let go of the will to fight. Not yet. I didn't know how much longer I could resist. The fire was inside me. It was me, but I had to keep fighting. I had to. I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. I woke to the feeling of heat against my skin, the sensation so intense it burned. My limbs were heavy, like they had been carved from stone, and I could barely move. The fire was inside me, suffocating, relentless. It pulsed in my chest like a second heart, its rhythm matching mine, its hunger growing with every breath. I gasped, trying to drag in air, but it was thick, heavy with ash. My lungs burned, but it wasn't just the smoke. It was the fire. It had taken root inside me, coiled around my soul, digging its claws deep. It wasn't just in my veins anymore. It was in my very thoughts, twisting them, bending them to its will. The world around me was a blur of flickering flame and shadow. I didn't know where I was anymore. The chasm, the heart of the wastes. It was all a fever dream now, a half-remembered nightmare that had blurred into something worse. The heat was unbearable. My skin felt like it was on fire, like I was burning from the inside out. I tried to stand, to push myself up from the cold ground, but my body wouldn't obey. Every movement was slow, deliberate, like I was moving through water. But the water was fire. I closed my eyes, pressing my palms to my face, feeling the sweat, the heat. My mind was a whirlwind, a storm of fire and whispers. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape them. Join us. Become part of the fire. You are one of us. The voices had been silent for a while, but now they were back. The same hollow, insistent hum. The same promises, the same relentless whispering, like a chorus of voices rising from the depths of the land itself. They weren't just in my mind anymore. They were everywhere, around me, inside me, consuming me. I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to hear it. I pushed myself upright, gritting my teeth against the fire searing my insides. I could feel it, creeping up my spine, curling around my ribs, tightening its grip around my heart. It wanted me to give in, to surrender, to become part of it. But I wouldn't. Not yet. I staggered forward, my feet dragging against the stone, leaving marks of heat where my body touched the ground. The world around me twisted, the shadows warping and bending as if the very air was alive, bending to the will of the fire. I reached out, my hands trembling as they brushed against the walls of the cavern. They were warm, like the heartbeat of the wastes itself, like they were pulsing with life. Or death. It was hard to tell anymore. The fire had blurred the lines between the two. But then, something caught my attention. A figure. It was standing in the distance, near the edge of the chasm, its form flickering like a flame. I couldn't make out its details, but I knew. I knew who it was. Her eyes burned with molten intensity as she watched me from the shadows. The woman, the one I had seen before. She had been waiting for me to come to this moment, to reach this point of no return. "You're still alive," she said, her voice like fire crackling against stone. "I didn't think you would last this long." I didn't answer, couldn't. My throat was raw, my body burning with the fire inside me. But I could feel it, the pull, the desire to give in, to fall into the fire, to let it take me. "No," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "I'm not ready." The woman stepped forward, her figure shifting and flickering like a flame in the wind. She moved closer, her eyes locked onto mine. The heat from her presence was overwhelming, almost suffocating. But I didn't move, couldn't. "You're already a part of it," she said softly, her voice gentle now, coaxing. "You have always been. You were never meant to escape." I shook my head, my fingers curling into fists. "I'm not like you. I'm not like any of you." Her smile was cold, empty. "You're wrong. You will be. We all become one with the fire, whether we want to or not. You're already changing. The fire has marked you. It will always be a part of you." "No," I said again, this time with more force. "I won't let it take me. I won't be like you." Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "You're stronger than I thought. But you're running out of time. The fire is already inside you. You can't fight it forever." I swallowed hard, my chest tight with fear and something else. Something darker. The fire was in me. It was taking me. But there was still a part of me that wasn't ready to give up. "I will never be like you," I said through gritted teeth, my voice hoarse. "I will not become part of this land." She stepped back, the fire around her flickering wildly, as if the very air itself was responding to her words. "You think you have a choice?" she asked, her voice now a low, mocking whisper. "The wastes don't care about your resistance. It will change you whether you want it to or not. You're already lost." The ground trembled beneath my feet, a low rumble that vibrated through my bones. It was the land. The fire. It was calling to me, pulling me toward the edge of the chasm. The molten core below seemed to pulse, as if it had sensed my defiance, and it wanted to drag me back into the depths. No, I breathed, my heart racing in my chest. I will not fall. But even as I said the words, I felt the fire rising inside me again, felt it curling around my mind, tightening like a vice. It was a suffocating, crushing force. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I was drowning. The woman's figure was fading into the smoke, but her voice lingered, echoing in my head. You can't outrun yourself. You are part of the wastes now. You always have been. We all are. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. But the fire inside me was too much. I could feel it spreading like an infection, taking hold of me, and I knew that I was close to losing everything. I staggered to my feet, my legs shaking beneath me, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let it take me. I had to do something. I had to break free. But how? I had already been marked. The wastes had already claimed me. The fire inside me was too strong. It was too much. And yet, what if I could use it? I stood there, in the silence that had followed her departure, the fire inside me gnawing at my bones, and I realized the wastes had changed me. The fire had remade me. But maybe, just maybe, I could still control it. I closed my eyes, focusing on the fire, on the heat that burned through my body. I could feel it, the raw power that it gave me, the strength it offered. But it wasn't just power. It was destruction. I could feel it in my core, the pull to burn, to erase everything around me, to make the land my own. But that was the choice, to control it, to not let it control me. I reached deep into the fire, into the molten core that had taken root inside me, and I pulled. I didn't try to fight it this time. I embraced it. I let it flow, and I bent it. I made it mine. I could feel the fire inside me, deep within the core of my being, alive, seething, pulsing with an energy I could scarcely comprehend. But it was mine now. It had become a part of me, yes, but I had taken hold of it. I had embraced it, and now it answered to me. The fire surged, and I pulled on it, focused all of my energy on commanding it. The heat within me was overwhelming, but I welcomed it, harnessing it with a strength I didn't know I had. It responded to me, swirling in the depths of my body, flooding through my veins, filling my limbs with power. But it wasn't just fire. It was destruction, creation, change. I lifted my hands, and before I could fully understand what I was doing, the ground beneath me shifted. The rock groaned in response, splitting and cracking as though it were alive. Flames erupted from the fissures, shooting up around me in swirling columns of molten fire. The wastes were changing, but so was I. The woman's words echoed in my mind, but they no longer held the same weight. You are already lost, she had said. But I wasn't lost. Not anymore. I had become something else. Something that wasn't bound by the rules of the wastes. I had claimed the fire as my own. I stepped forward, my feet pressing into the molten rock as the flames raged around me. The world was bending to my will. The fire that had once been my enemy, my tormentor, was now my ally. Could feel the heat, the pulse of it, as if it were an extension of myself. I could hear the land crying out, the earth trembling beneath my feet, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. There was no turning back now. The wastes had changed me. It had marked me. But now I was rewriting the story. I reached into the fire again, deeper this time, feeling the intense heat sear my skin, my very soul, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I wove the flames into something new, something I could control. The fire was mine. With a shout, I released the energy I had gathered, and the fire erupted in a wave of destruction, tearing through the cavern. The walls cracked and split, the molten rock flowing like rivers of lava as the earth itself responded to my will. And then it stopped. Silence. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my breath, harsh and ragged in the stillness. The flames had receded, but they still flickered at the edges of my mind, still surged within me like an endless tide. I wasn't sure what had happened. I wasn't sure what I had done. But the wastes, for the first time, were silent. The land, the fire, everything had stilled. A voice broke through the silence, but it wasn't the woman. It was deeper, more resonant, like the voice of the land itself. "You have chosen," it said, its tone neither angry nor approving, but simply accepting. "You have claimed your place in the wastes. You are not its master, but you are no longer its prey." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The fire in my chest was all the answer I needed. The land had been waiting for someone like me. It had chosen me, yes, but I had taken that power, turned it into something more than just a force of destruction. I had made it my weapon, my ally. But even as I stood there, feeling the fire still alive within me, I knew that this wasn't over. The wastes hadn't finished with me yet. I could feel it, deep in the earth, like a heartbeat, a rhythm that matched my own. The woman appeared before me, but she wasn't the same as she had been. She was no longer just a being of fire. She was something else. Something that mirrored me, something that had changed along with the land. She didn't smile this time. She didn't mock me. "You have done it," she said softly. "You've controlled it. You've become it." Her eyes burned with something new, something different, recognition, perhaps, or fear. I wasn't sure, but I could feel it. She understood. She understood that I had become something more than just a survivor, more than just a creature of the wastes. I had mastered it. "I'm not like you," I said, my voice steady. "I never was." She tilted her head, the fire around her flickering like the last embers of a dying flame. "No," she said, almost sadly. "You never were." I looked at her and I realized then, she wasn't the last of the wastes. She was part of it, yes, but she had surrendered. She had become one with the land, with the fire, and she had let it consume her. But I was different. I wasn't a victim of the wastes. I wasn't its creation. I was its challenge. "I don't need to become part of the land," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'll shape it. I'll change it." The woman's expression faltered, and she stepped back, as if something about me had shifted. Something about my very presence was no longer the same. Her gaze flickered toward the molten chasm below, the heart of the wastes, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You may shape it," she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But remember this, there is always a price. The fire doesn't give. It takes." She was right. I knew she was right. The fire didn't give. It never had. But as the heat still churned inside me, as I stood there amidst the ruins of the wastes, I realized something else. The fire might take. But I was the one who would decide what it took. I was the one who would decide how to use it. The wastes had tried to reshape me, but now I would reshape them. With a final, lingering glance at the woman, I turned away, my feet heavy against the molten ground, but my heart was burning with purpose. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was something more, and the wastes would remember me. The fire was inside me, pulsing through my veins like an endless river of molten stone. I could feel it, the heat, the power, but there was something else, something deeper. The land, the wastes, they felt me now. They understood me, and I, for the first time, understood them. I could feel the earth beneath my feet, the way it trembled in response to the fire that coursed through me. It was no longer just the land. It was a living thing, a creature with a heartbeat that matched mine. The fire had bound us together in a way I couldn't explain, and I could feel the pull, the hunger of the wastes, calling to me. But it wasn't the same anymore. I wasn't running from it. I was part of it now. I moved through the chasm, my steps slow and deliberate, feeling the heat of the land rise up around me, the crackling of fire beneath my feet. The air was thick with ash, swirling in the smoke that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The light of the fire cast long shadows, flickering like ghosts, stretching across the jagged walls of the cavern. And yet, in the midst of all this destruction, I felt a strange calm. The fire inside me was no longer a force of destruction, a thing that sought only to consume. It was something else now, something I could wield, I stretched my hands out before me, feeling the heat radiate from the stone beneath my palms. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the fire fill me, letting it flow through me. The world seemed to slow, as though time itself had bent to the will of the flame. The heat in my chest, the burning hunger that had once threatened to overtake me, now hummed with purpose. It was mine to control. With a thought, the ground before me cracked open, molten rock spilling from the fissures as flames erupted from the depths. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the world around me as the fire flowed in waves, responding to my every command. It was like I was shaping the land itself, molding it with my hands, bending it to my will. For a moment I almost smiled. This was power, real power. But then, the voices returned. "Join us. You are one of us." I froze, my hands still raised, and the fire dimmed slightly, flickering uncertainly. The voices were faint, but they were there, whispering at the edges of my consciousness. They hadn't gone away. They had never left. They were inside me, the very fabric of the wastes woven into my soul. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to shut them out. I am not one of you. But the pull was there, that familiar hunger, the call to surrender, to let go, to fall into the fire completely. It was almost comforting in a way. The land, the fire, they wanted me. They wanted me to be a part of it, to lose myself in the endless cycle of destruction and rebirth. But I wouldn't. Not yet. Not while I still had control. I pressed my palms to the ground again, feeling the fire respond, the earth quaking beneath me as the flames swirled and shifted. I forced the voices to the back of my mind, pushing them down, refusing to listen. I am not lost, I thought, clenching my fists until my nails dug into my palms. I am the fire, but I control it. I control it. The land trembled again, this time more violently. The fire roared, its intensity growing in waves. I could feel the wastes pulling at me, testing me, challenging me. But I stood firm. I wouldn't be swallowed. Not by the fire, not by the land. I wasn't here to become one with it. I was here to reshape it, to make it mine. As I stood there, the ground beneath me cracked open further, revealing a vast chasm, deeper than any I had seen before. The molten rock glowed with an eerie light, a heart of fire that pulsed with an unrelenting rhythm. The land was alive. The fire was alive. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just shaping the land. I was connected to it. The fire, the earth, the destruction, it was all part of me now. I felt the weight of it. I understood it. The wastes didn't just change you, they consumed you. They swallowed your soul, devoured your identity, and made you part of the land. They reshaped you until you were unrecognizable, until you were nothing but a shadow of what you had been. That was the cost. That was the price of survival. And yet, I wasn't like the others. I wasn't just here to survive. I was here to take it all, to bend the land, the fire, to my will, to shape it into something new. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, the world seemed to fall away. The fire, the earth, they were no longer just forces. They were me. They were part of me, a part of my very soul. But there was something more, something deeper, something that called to me from the core of the wastes. A voice, faint but unmistakable. You cannot control what you are. The words echoed in my mind, and for a moment, I faltered. The fire inside me flared in response, hot and violent, but I forced myself to take a breath. I was in control. I was the one shaping the fire, not the other way around. You cannot escape it. The voice was closer now, its tone dark and unyielding. The wastes will consume you, as it consumes all who enter. I clenched my fists, feeling the fire respond, feeling the land tremble beneath me. The voice was part of the wastes, part of the land that had shaped me, but it wasn't me. I wasn't just a victim of this place. I was its master. The ground cracked open again, and from the chasm below, a dark shape rose. A figure, a silhouette, burning with the same molten intensity one had seen before. It was her, the woman. She had returned. But she wasn't the same. She was changed. Her body flickered like flame, her skin shimmering with the same heat that had once consumed me. But her eyes, they were different. There was no longer the hunger, the longing, the desire to claim me. There was only emptiness. "You think you have won," she said, her voice distant, her gaze focused on me. "But you are wrong. You can never escape the fire. You can never control it." I stood my ground, the fire inside me roaring in response. "I am not like you," I said, my voice steady, unshaken. "I control the fire. I bend it to my will." She tilted her head, her molten eyes narrowing. "You may control it now, but remember, the wastes are not a gift. They are a curse. They will always be a curse." I could feel the weight of her words, but they didn't faze me. I had already made my choice. I wasn't here to be consumed. I wasn't here to surrender. I was here to take what the wastes had tried to take from me. I was here to reshape it. I could see the doubt in her eyes, the flicker of something that wasn't just fire, something that wasn't just land, something human. She had been lost to the wastes, but I wouldn't be. "I'm not here to escape," I said, my voice cold, firm. "I'm here to change it." Her form flickered again, and then, as though she had heard something she didn't want to hear, she began to fade, her presence shrinking like smoke in the wind. She was gone, but the fire still burned inside me, and I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. The wastes had changed me, but I had changed the wastes. And now the land was mine. The fire was in me, but it was no longer just a force of destruction. It was a tool, a weapon, a new part of me, like another limb I could shape and mold to my will. I had become something else, something more. The land around me pulsed with the same rhythm as my own heartbeat, and I could feel the energy in the air, the fire beneath my skin, and the waste stretching out before me, like a vast canvas waiting for me to paint it with my will. But with this power came a gnawing sense of unease. The wastes had transformed me, yes. They had changed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. But there was something about the way the land responded to me that felt wrong. The fire inside me burned hotter now, and every time I focused on it, every time I commanded it, I felt the land shift and writhe beneath my feet, like it was trying to test me, to see if I was truly its master. It was as if the wastes were watching me, waiting for me to slip up, to show weakness. I wasn't just reshaping the land was reshaping me. I stood at the edge of the chasm, my hands still raised, the fire flickering around me in controlled waves. Below, the molten core of the wastes pulsed with a steady, rhythmic hum, its heartbeat synchronized with mine. The air around me shimmered with heat, but I barely noticed it anymore. The fire had become so much a part of me, it was like breathing, natural. I was in control. But even as I told myself that, I felt it. The pull, the pressure. It was subtle at first, like a whisper in the back of my mind, but it grew stronger with each passing moment, tugging at the edges of my thoughts. Come closer. It was the fire again, or maybe the wastes themselves. Or both. It wasn't clear anymore. The land, the fire, they were one, and I was part of it. I closed my eyes, pushing the thought away, but it lingered. The hunger, the desire to sink deeper into the wastes, to give in completely, to let the fire consume me. It wasn't the same kind of fire that had once threatened to destroy me. It was smoother now, more seductive, like it was coaxing me, whispering promises of power and destruction. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about becoming something more. The fire inside me stirred, answering the call. But I resisted. I had to. I opened my eyes, and for a moment, I thought I saw something in the distance. Movement. A shadow flickering against the walls of the chasm. I wasn't alone. The woman, the one who had been a part of the wastes before me, she had returned. Her form flickered in and out of sight, as if she were made of fire itself, her body shifting like smoke in the wind. She was watching me, her molten eyes glowing with an intensity that made my heart skip. She didn't move. She just observed, waiting. "You've done it," she said, her voice low and almost reverent, like she was speaking to something much larger than herself. "You've become what I could never be." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. I had surpassed her. I knew that now. She had been a creature of the wastes, lost to the fire, consumed by it. But I wasn't. I had controlled it. I had made it my own. "You're not like me," she continued, her voice almost wistful. "You won't make the same mistake I did. You won't fall." I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. She was right. I wasn't like her. I hadn't fallen. I had risen. She took a step forward, her form flickering like a dying flame. "But even so, it will catch you. The fire. It will always catch you." I stared at her, feeling the heat of her gaze, the intensity of her words. There was truth in what she said. The fire was inside me. It was part of me, and yet, something about her words unsettled me. She had been consumed by the wastes. She had given in. I wasn't like her, but that didn't mean I was safe. "You won't escape it," she said, her voice suddenly harsh, desperate. "No one does. The wastes claim all who enter. You can't fight it forever." I felt the fire inside me flare, a violent surge of heat that rattled my bones. She was right. I could feel it. The fire was growing stronger with every passing moment. The land was alive with it. The wastes were alive with it. I wasn't just controlling the fire anymore. It was controlling me. I shook my head. "I'm not like you. I won't be consumed." "You already are," she whispered, her voice hollow. "You just don't see it yet." Her words stung, and I felt the fire inside me flare again, hotter this time. But I wouldn't let it take me. Not yet. I had to remain in control. The woman's form flickered once more, and then she was gone. The land shifted, groaning beneath my feet, and I could feel the earth trembling, as if the wastes themselves were reacting to her departure. The silence was deafening. I stood there, staring into the chasm, the fire still burning in my chest, but it was no longer just an external force. It was inside me. It was me. And yet, I could feel the land pulling at me, urging me forward, urging me to give in. But I couldn't. I looked down into the molten depths below, my thoughts swirling, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I could feel the power surging through me, but I also felt the weight of it. The land, the fire, the wastes, they were consuming me, piece by piece, and I could feel it, the pressure, the strain. The fire inside me was growing stronger, hotter, more insistent, and I realized something that terrified me. I wasn't just controlling the wastes anymore. I was becoming one with them. I wasn't the same as the woman who had fallen before me, but I wasn't sure I was entirely in control either. The wastes were alive, and they were changing me. It was a slow process, but I could feel it. The land was pulling at me, like tendrils of fire wrapping around my soul, tightening with every passing moment. The fire was inside me, yes, but it was also outside of me. It was part of the world now, and the world was part of me. The wastes had marked me, and no matter how much I resisted, I could feel myself slipping. I am the fire, I thought. I control it. I shape it. But deep down, I knew the truth. The wastes had changed me, and in the end, I wouldn't be able to control it forever. The fire would consume me, just as it had consumed everyone before me. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I was meant to be part of the wastes. Maybe I was meant to be one with the fire. The fire surged inside me, and I closed my eyes, feeling it flare brighter, hotter, until it was all I could see, all I could feel. The land rumbled, and I knew, I could feel it in my bones, that something was about to change. Something was coming. I had changed the wastes, but now the wastes were changing me, and there was no turning back. The fire inside me was no longer just a burning thing. It was a living, breathing creature, a part of me that I couldn't escape, no matter how much I tried to distance myself from it. The wastes had changed me, and I was starting to feel the full weight of that transformation. I stood at the edge of the chasm, staring down into the molten depths, feeling the pulse of the land beneath my feet, the beat of the fire in my chest. It was as though the entire world was alive, its heartbeat mirroring mine, the fire feeding off my every breath. I had become part of it. I had tried to control it, to shape it, but in doing so, I had become just as much a creature of the wastes as those who had fallen before me. I had reshaped the land, yes, but now the land was reshaping me. The voices came again, but this time they were stronger, more insistent. They had always been there, lurking at the edges of my mind, whispering, coaxing, urging me to give in. But now it felt different. The fire within me had grown, and with it, the hunger. It was no longer a quiet murmur in the back of my thoughts. It was loud. It was insistent. Join us. Become part of the fire. You are one of us. I gritted my teeth and tried to push the voices away, but they wouldn't stop. They had never stopped. And the more I tried to fight them, the more powerful they became, as if the very act of resisting fed them, made them grow stronger. The fire flared again, and this time, I couldn't stop it. It surged through me, a violent, uncontrollable force that rattled my bones and seared my skin. I staggered back, my hands instinctively reaching out to steady myself against the heat, but there was nowhere to hide. The fire was everywhere now. It was in the air, in the ground, in my very soul. I gasped, trying to force air into my lungs, but the heat was suffocating. It was as though the very earth itself was alive, pressing in on me, trying to consume me. I could feel the fire growing stronger, hotter, wrapping around me, pulling me deeper into the wastes. And then I felt it, the land. It wasn't just a passive force anymore. It was watching me. The wastes had become sentient, and they were testing me, challenging me, pulling me toward the brink. The fire was no longer a thing I could control. It was a part of me, and it was changing me in ways I couldn't comprehend. I staggered forward, my legs shaking beneath me as I struggled to keep my balance. My hands burned from the heat, and my body felt like it was being stretched thin, torn apart by the fire that was raging inside me. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't let the fire take me. Not yet. I closed my eyes and concentrated, trying to focus, to push through the pain. I had to hold on. I had to stay in control. But the fire was growing stronger with every passing second, its intensity flaring up and down like a storm, unpredictable, wild. Come closer. The voice was louder now, as if the land itself was speaking to me. The fire was pulling at me, urging me forward, deeper into the chasm, into the heart of the wastes. It was seduction, slow and deliberate, coaxing me to give in, to become part of it, to let the fire consume me completely. But I fought it. I had to fight it. I reached out, feeling the heat, feeling the pulse of the fire beneath my skin, and I screamed. It was a sound that echoed through the cavern, a primal sound that resonated with the very land itself. I could feel the earth shaking beneath me, and for a moment, I thought I might fall into the chasm below. But instead, I stayed on my feet, fighting back, forcing the fire to bend to my will. The land trembled again, this time with more intensity. The fire surged in response, but I didn't let it control me. I refused. I would not fall. But the struggle was growing harder. The fire was becoming too strong. It was trying to take me, to swallow me whole, and for a moment, I wondered if it was too late. Had I already lost? Was I already part of it? You are one of us, the voice whispered again. But this time it wasn't just a whisper. It was a command. It was the land speaking to me directly, urging me to let go, to surrender, to become one with the fire. I shook my head, my body racked with tremors. The pain was unbearable, and yet I knew, deep down, that I couldn't let go. Not yet. Not until I had reshaped the wastes in my image. Not until I had made this land mine. With a guttural cry, I forced the fire back, pushing it down, forcing it to obey me. My hands burned, my chest ached with the effort, but I refused to stop. I had to control it. I had to. And then, as if in answer to my defiance, the land erupted. The earth cracked open beneath me, and from the depths of the chasm, a wave of molten rock surged upward, spiraling around me like a violent, living thing. The fire surged in response, a violent, uncontrollable force that ripped through the cavern, threatening to consume everything in its path. I stumbled back, my body trembling with the effort to control the fire, but it was no use. The wastes had broken free. The land, the fire, the destruction, it was all too much. And then, in the midst of the chaos, I heard it again. Join us. But this time, the voice wasn't inside my head. It was coming from all around me. The fire had spoken. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a roar. The land had truly come alive. The wastes were no longer a place of destruction. They were a being. And they were speaking to me. I looked around, seeing the fire swirling in the air, the molten rock rising up around me, and I realized something that chilled me to the bone. I had become part of it. There was no escaping it now. The fire, the wastes, they were me. And I was them. The land was alive, and I had become its heartbeat. And the fire would burn until nothing was left. The fire within me was no longer a thing I could ignore, a force I could tame. It had become me. I was the flame, the molten core of the wastes. Every breath I took, every step I made, was a pulse in the land itself. The wastes were no longer just a place. They were a part of me, as much a part of my soul as the blood that coursed through my veins. But with this realization came the full weight of the truth. The fire had consumed me, and in doing so, it had changed me in ways I could no longer understand. I stood at the edge of the chasm, looking down into the boiling sea of molten rock below. The fire swirled around me, violent and unpredictable, like a storm of rage and hunger. It was alive and it was demanding to be fed. But I knew, deep down, I could never satiate it. No one could. It was an endless cycle, a hunger that could never be fulfilled. I closed my eyes, breathing in the heat, trying to steady myself. The wastes had become my world, and I had become part of them. But as the fire swirled around me, I could feel it. A sense of loss. A sense that something was slipping away. The woman had been right, in a way. I had become what she was, but I had become something worse. She had surrendered to the fire, allowed herself to be consumed by it. But I had fought it. I had tried to control it. And in doing so, I had made it my master. The land groaned beneath my feet, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through my chest. I felt the earth moving, shifting, like it was alive, like it was breathing. The fire surged in response, a violent burst of heat that made the air shimmer and twist. It was pulling me closer, urging me to let go, to fall into the molten depths below. It's not too late, the voice whispered again, that same voice I had heard so many times before, but this time it was different. It wasn't just a whisper in the back of my mind. It was a presence, a force pressing in on me, demanding that I listen. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. Couldn't fall. I couldn't become just another soul swallowed by the fire. I wouldn't. But the fire was relentless. It clawed at my mind, at my soul, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts like a beast hungry for flesh. The wastes were pulling me into their depths, their hunger growing with every passing second. The fire was alive and it wanted me. It wanted all of me. And I realized something then. I wasn't fighting the wastes anymore. I was fighting myself. The fire inside me burned hotter, surging like a storm of rage and fury. It was no longer a force I could control. It was a force that controlled me. It was a beast I had tried to tame, and now it had turned on me, devouring my will, my identity, my very essence. I was no longer the person I had been when I first entered the wastes. I wasn't even the person I had been when I had tried to reshape the land, to claim the fire as my own. I had become something else, something other. I reached out with shaking hands, feeling the molten rock beneath my fingertips, and the land trembled in response. A deep, rumbling sound that seemed to shake the very air around me. The fire flared again, a violent, living thing, and I gasped as the heat intensified, searing my skin, but I didn't pull away, couldn't. The fire had me in its grip. It was too late to turn back, too late to undo what I had done. I closed my eyes again, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I thought I saw her, the woman who had once been the embodiment of the wastes, the one who had tried to warn me. Her form flickered before me, like a mirage, her molten eyes glowing with the same intensity as the fire around us. "You are part of it now," she whispered, her voice soft but full of a strange, eerie sadness. "You were never meant to control it. No one is." I could hear the truth in her words, but it didn't matter anymore. The fire was mine. The wastes were mine, and I had become them. There was no going back. With a scream, I let the fire take me. The ground cracked beneath me, and the world seemed to erupt in a cascade of heat and flame. The earth shifted, breaking apart as rivers of molten rock surged upward, swallowing the landscape. The sky above me darkened, swirling with clouds of smoke and ash, and I could feel the land writhing, as if it were alive, as if it were in pain. But I didn't stop, couldn't. I had embraced it, the fire, the wastes, all of it, and now I would reshape it. I stepped forward, my body shaking, my mind clouded with the fire, but I didn't care. The world around me twisted and cracked as I moved, as though the land itself was bending to my will. The fire responded, swirling around me, following my movements like a living thing. It was mine, all of it. The wastes were mine. I looked down at my hands, watching as the molten rock shifted beneath my fingers, as if the very earth was alive, shifting in response to my touch. The fire pulsed, its heat growing ever stronger, and I felt the land vibrating beneath me, the very pulse of the earth syncing with my own. This is my world now. The thought echoed through my mind, and with it, a strange, hollow sense of satisfaction filled me. I had done it. I had become one with the fire, one with the wastes. I had reshaped this place in my image, and it would never be the same again. But even as I stood there, at the heart of the wastes, feeling the fire burn in my chest, I could feel something more, something darker. The land was changing, yes, but it was not just the wastes that had been transformed. It was me, and I didn't know if I could ever escape it. The fire was no longer something I controlled. It controlled me. I stood in the heart of the wastes, watching the land bend and twist beneath my feet. The molten rivers surged forward, drawn by my will, the fire flickering and swirling around me like a living thing, responding to my every movement. It wasn't just the land. The land was me, and I was the land. I could feel it now, the fire that had once threatened to consume me, the very heat that had torn at my flesh was a part of me. It pulsed in my veins, the molten core of the earth now embedded deep in my chest. The wastes were no longer just a place. They were a reflection of who I had become. But as I stood there, feeling the power of the fire thrumming through my body, something deeper gnawed at me. A coldness, a void that I couldn't shake. The satisfaction that had once come from reshaping the land now felt hollow, empty. I had fought for control, fought to shape this place, and I had won. But what had I really won? The fire was mine. But at what cost? I lifted my hands, watching as the molten rivers surged in response. The air around me shimmered with heat, the land bending and breaking beneath my will. But the power felt distant, like I was a spectator in my own body, watching as the wastes shifted and tore themselves apart. This was it, I thought. This is what I wanted. This is the power I sought. But the thought didn't comfort me. Instead, it sent a chill through my spine, a strange unease that I couldn't place. The wastes were reshaped, yes. The fire was mine to command, but I felt lost, as though I had become a part of something that was too vast, too alive to control. Something that could devour me just as easily as I had devoured it. It's too late now, I thought, closing my eyes, trying to push the feelings away. I've already become one with the fire. There's no turning back. But even as I told myself that, I couldn't ignore the gnawing, ever-present sense of something slipping away. I had reshaped the wastes, but in doing so, I had become part of it. And I wasn't sure anymore whether that was a victory or a curse. I opened my eyes, and for a brief moment, I saw her again, the woman who had once been the embodiment of the wastes. She stood at the edge of the chasm, her form flickering like fire itself, her molten eyes glowing with an intensity that mirrored the flames surrounding us. "You've done it," she said, her voice softer now, as though she were speaking to someone not entirely there. You've taken control of the wastes, but you are also a prisoner of them, just as I was. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I knew what she meant. The wastes didn't just reshape the land. They reshaped you. The fire didn't just burn you. Consumed everything. Every part of you that had once been human. And as I looked at the woman, I saw it in her eyes. She had been swallowed whole by the fire, by the land, and now she was little more than a flickering shadow, a remnant of the power she had once wielded. She had surrendered, and in surrendering, she had lost everything. But I wasn't like her, was I? I reached out, my hands trembling as I tried to steady myself. The fire burned hotter now, responding to my every thought, my every movement. But it wasn't just power. It was a constant hunger. The land, the fire, the wastes, it was all the same. And the more I tried to hold on to it, the more it pulled at me, threatening to consume me whole. You've become what I was, the woman said softly, as though reading my thoughts. But you won't escape it. None of us do. I felt her words in my bones, the truth of them resonating through me. The wastes had consumed her, and now it was consuming me too. No, I said, my voice shaking with a cold that had nothing to do with the fire. I'm not like you. I'm not going to fall. But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. I could feel the pull, the hunger of the fire, gnawing at my soul. It was a quiet thing, a slow burn that began at the edges of my consciousness and crept inward. I have control, I thought desperately. I can still control it. But the fire flared hotter, as if laughing at me. The wastes were alive, and the land was testing me. The fire was no longer a tool I wielded. It was a part of me, a part of my very essence, and it had no intention of being controlled. I could feel the weight of it, the pull of the land beneath me, trying to swallow me whole. The more I resisted, the stronger it grew. The fire was alive, and it wasn't going to let me go. I took a step back, the ground beneath me shifting violently, and for a moment, I thought I might fall into the chasm below. But I didn't. Instead, I stood my ground, watching as the flames danced and flickered around me, the fire licking at my skin, its heat almost unbearable. This is it, I thought. This is who I am now. And then I heard it, a voice, faint but unmistakable, rising from the depths of the chasm. You cannot escape. The fire flared, its heat searing my skin as I turned toward the source of the voice. The land seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat, the wastes alive, watching me, testing me. You cannot escape what you are. I felt the land shake beneath me, and for a moment, I thought it was an earthquake. But no, the wastes weren't shaking in response to an external force. They were shaking because of me. The fire inside me had become too much. It was no longer something I could control. It was a part of me, a force I couldn't escape, and now it was devouring me. I stumbled, my legs weak beneath me, and I fell to my knees, gasping for breath as the fire burned brighter, hotter, consuming everything. The wastes were alive. The fire was alive, and I was trapped in the heart of it, a prisoner of my own creation. And yet, in the midst of all this, I felt a strange calm. I had done it. I had reshaped the wastes. I had become one with the fire. But the price for that power was steep. The fire that had once been a force of destruction had become my very soul. It had consumed me, and there was no escaping it now. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I thought I could hear the voices again, calling to me, whispering promises of power and control. But this time I didn't resist. I didn't fight it. I let the fire have me. And in that moment, I realized something I had known all along. I had become what I feared most. I had become the wastes. I had become the fire. I had become the wastes. And I had no idea what that meant anymore. The air around me shimmered with heat. The very sky above me darkened with ash and smoke. The world had changed, or maybe it was me who had changed. Maybe the two were one and the same now. The fire that had once threatened to consume me had, in the end, swallowed me whole, and there was no going back. I could feel the pulse of the wastes beneath my feet, its rhythm syncing with my own heart. The molten rivers flowed like veins, arteries of a massive, living creature. The land throbbed with life and death. It was all-consuming, all-encompassing, and I had become part of it. I had become the land's heartbeat, its pulse, its hunger. But at what cost? I looked around, seeing the land, what was left of it, ripple with the fire, its molten surface glowing, the air thick with smoke. The waste stretched out in every direction, an endless, violent sea of flame and destruction. And I was in the center of it. There had been a time when I had fought to survive, fought to escape the wastes, to free myself from the fire. But now I realized there was no escape. The land had taken me. It had reshaped me. I was as much a part of it as the flames themselves. But something deep inside me, a small, flickering spark, refused to let go. I still fought. Even now, I felt the tug again, the whisper at the edge of my thoughts. You belong here. You were always meant to be part of it. The fire surged in response, the heat flaring brighter, hotter, a violent reminder that I could never escape. And yet, for a moment, I almost wanted to give in. I almost wanted to let the fire take me completely, let it erase what was left of who I had been. But the flickering spark, the piece of me that was still human, refused to die. I stumbled forward, feeling the land ripple beneath me. It was like walking through a living thing, each step shifting the earth beneath my feet. The air was thick with smoke, and the heat was suffocating. My body burned with the fire, but it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed the wastes to acknowledge me, to recognize my power. I had reshaped the land, yes. I had molded the fire to my will. But there was something I hadn't fully grasped. The wastes were not just a force to be controlled. They were a force to be understood. And as I walked deeper into the heart of the fire, I began to see it. The land was alive, but it wasn't alive in the way I had thought. It wasn't alive in the way I was. The wastes weren't just a place of destruction. They were a living, breathing organism with its own consciousness, its own will. And now I was part of it. I had become a cell in its body, a cog in its endless cycle of death and rebirth. I looked down at my hands, now hardened and scorched by the fire. The heat that radiated from them was no longer painful. It was just normal. This was who I was now. This was what I had become. And yet, as I stood there, the flickering spark inside me fought back. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was still there. A reminder of what I had been. A reminder that I was more than just the fire. But it was fading. Slowly, quietly, it was being smothered by the flames. A voice called out from the distance. It was faint, like a whisper in the wind, but I heard it. Help! I froze, my heart skipping a beat. The voice was familiar. It was human. And yet, it didn't belong here. Not in the heart of the wastes. Not in this land of fire and destruction. I could feel the wastes pulling at me, urging me to ignore it, to focus on the fire, to focus on the power. But something inside me, a part of me that hadn't been completely consumed, pushed forward, pulling me away from the flames. I didn't know why, but I had to follow the voice. I walked through the wastes, the fire swirling around me, pulling at my skin, trying to drag me back. But I ignored it, each step bringing me closer to the source of the voice. The land seemed to shift with every movement, the molten rivers of lava parting as if they recognized my passage. It was as though the wastes were guiding me, leading me toward something or someone. Finally, I reached the edge of a crumbling cliff, the molten rock spilling over the side like a river of blood. And there, at the base of the cliff, I saw them. A group of refugees, human, fragile, weak. They were barely clinging to life, their skin burnt and raw, their bodies battered from the harsh, unforgiving land. They looked up at me with wide eyes, fear and awe mixed together, as if they had never expected to see another human again. And then, in the midst of the pain and suffering, I saw something that made my heart stop. One of them, a woman with eyes like molten lava, was standing apart from the others. Her form flickered like fire itself, her body shifting and twisting in ways that defied reality. She was changing just as I had. But she was different. She was fighting. I stepped forward, my voice cracking as I spoke, though I wasn't sure if I could still even speak like I once had. You, my words came out in a rasp. You can't survive this. She looked at me, her molten eyes filled with defiance. I am not like you, she said softly, almost whispering. I will not let the fire consume me. I will not let it erase who I am. I felt a pang in my chest, a strange, flickering sense of something I hadn't felt in so long, hope. You can fight it? I asked, my voice trembling with something that wasn't the fire. It was fear. Fear that I had already lost what she still had. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the pain. I fight it every day, but the fire, it wants us. It wants to consume us. I stepped closer to her, my hands reaching out involuntarily. The fire surged around me, hotter, more insistent, but I didn't care. The spark inside me, no matter how faint, burned brighter than ever. You can't resist forever, I said softly, feeling the weight of my own words. I couldn't. The woman's eyes softened, a strange understanding passing between us. But maybe we don't have to fight it. Maybe we can learn to live with it. Maybe. But before she could finish, the earth trembled violently. The ground beneath us cracked open with a deafening roar, and the molten rivers of lava surged toward us like a tidal wave of fire. I looked at the refugees, feeling a flicker of something, responsibility, deep within me. The fire had consumed so much, but there was still something worth saving. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I knew what I had to do. I turned to the woman, my voice resolute. Let's escape together. Her molten eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw the flicker of something I hadn't seen in myself for a long time. Hope. The ground shook beneath me again. A deep, resonating tremor that made my bones rattle. The fire surged, the molten rivers rising higher and higher as the wastes seemed to awaken, as if responding to some distant, primordial force. The refugees, fragile, broken, looked up at me with a mix of hope and terror. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could save them. Terror that the very thing I had become might destroy them. But I wasn't sure anymore if I could save them, if I could even save myself. I turned back to the woman, her molten eyes meeting mine with quiet resolve. She had chosen to fight. She was still holding on, still resisting the fire that was consuming her from the inside out. She wasn't like me. She wasn't lost, yet, but she wasn't giving up. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw something that had been missing in myself. Hope. I had been consumed by the wastes, reshaped by the fire into something monstrous, something alien. But she was fighting to keep her humanity, her sense of self, even as the fire clawed at her, trying to drag her into its endless, violent abyss. It was then that I understood. The fire didn't have to destroy me. It didn't have to consume everything. I had thought that I could control it, bend it to my will. I had fought for power, for control, but the truth was, I had never understood the fire at all. I had been consumed by my own ambition. But maybe, just maybe, there was another way. The earth trembled again, this time more violently, and I staggered, my hands reaching out for the nearest rock to steady myself. The ground beneath us cracked open wider, the molten rivers rushing toward us with terrifying speed. It was happening. The wastes were reclaiming what they had given. The fire was taking back what it had briefly surrendered. But the refugees were still here. The woman was still here. And I couldn't let them be consumed by the fire, not like I had been, not like the others. I turned back to her, urgency rising in my chest. We need to leave, I said, my voice hoarse, the fire gnawing at my words, curling around every syllable. Now. The woman nodded, her molten eyes filled with determination. It's not too late. If we can find the path, if we can get to the highlands, there's still a chance. The refugees, those who still had the strength to move, gathered themselves, following our lead. Their eyes were wide, their bodies barely able to support them, but they were moving. They were still alive. I reached out and pulled one of the weaker ones toward me, helping him steady himself. His skin was burned, his eyes wide with fear, but there was a flicker of gratitude in his gaze. "We'll make it," I promised, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. The ground cracked again beneath us, louder this time, and I could feel the air thickening, the pressure building. The fire was rushing toward us like a predator, closing in, faster than I could have imagined. The wastes were waking up, and they were angry. I could feel it in my bones. But we had to keep moving. We had to get out before it was too late. I led the group toward the higher ground, my heart racing in my chest, each step pushing me further into the unknown. The fire surged, but the land seemed to recognize my presence. Parted for me, like the wastes were giving way to the very thing they had created. For a moment, I thought I felt something within me stir, a faint trace of the old me, the part of me that had once walked in the light of the sun, not the flames of this hellish place. I wasn't completely lost. Not yet. The land groaned again, a low, terrifying sound, and I felt the pressure of the wastes bearing down on me, the fire licking at my heels. We were running out of time. The woman beside me glanced up, her molten eyes flickering with something more than fire now. It was a glimmer of resolve, of something human. She was stronger than I had given her credit for. Maybe we were both stronger than I had thought. "The highlands aren't far," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around us. "Keep moving." I nodded, urging the refugees onward, my breath ragged in my chest. The fire was close now, too close. I could feel it pressing against my back, could feel the heat searing my skin. The wastes were reclaiming their territory, and we were nothing more than intruders, running from a force far more powerful than we could comprehend. And then, just as I thought we might not make it, the highlands came into view. It was a jagged, rocky landscape, the land rising sharply away from the inferno below. The fire couldn't reach this high. The wastes would stop at the edge, just as they had before. There was a fragile safety here, a boundary the land had set long ago. We reached the summit, gasping for breath, and I turned to look back at the wastes, the burning land stretching endlessly behind us. The fire raged below, churning, shifting, but it couldn't touch us here. For a brief moment I felt it, the release. The fire didn't control me here, not fully. But as I looked down at the refugees, my heart twisted. We were safe for now, but there was no escaping the truth. The wastes were alive. They were part of us. And the fire that had reshaped me, reshaped all of us, would never die. The woman stood beside me, watching the land below with the same quiet resolve. She had made it just as I had. We had both fought the fire in our own ways, and though we were scarred, we were not completely lost. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The woman turned to me, her molten eyes flickering with something I could not place. A sadness, a loss, but also an understanding. "It will never be over. Not for us. Not for anyone who has crossed into the wastes." She was right. The fire that had consumed me wasn't just a physical force. It was a part of the land, a part of who we had become. The wastes would always be there, lingering, waiting for the next person to cross their threshold. But as I stood there, looking out over the highlands, I realized something. The fire was no longer a curse. It was a part of me and a part of all of us. We could never escape it, but we could learn to live with it. We could survive. And maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. Not the world we had lost. Not the innocence we had once known. But something new. Something forged from the fire. As long as we still had the spark of hope, we could find a way forward. And for the first time since I had entered the wastes, I believed it.